Hey guys, I just wanted to give my review of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. So, I'm basically going to do this review in the same format that I did my 10 Cloverfield review, in which the first portion of this is going to be spoiler free, and then I'll put an annotation in the comments. I'll put an annotation so you can jump ahead to the end of the video, an annotation, and also just warning you about all the spoilers I'm going to get into for the other portion of the video. So I kind of went in with kind of measured optimism, just because of, it took like 3 years to put, it was announced like 2013 and at Comic Con, and then my initial thoughts is I thought it was too soon to do a Batman Superman movie. And then it was pushed back a year, and then it was supposed to be released on the same day as Captain America 3. Then it got moved back to March, March of this year, and then there was all this like behind the scenes stuff saying that Zack Snyder only mentioned putting Batman in the Superman movie just because he offhandedly mentioned that in a meeting with studio execs, and they took it very seriously, and now he had to deliver on it. And it was basically supposed to be the actual like setup for the Justice League, and even more so than Man of Steel, the whole DC extended universe, as they're calling it. So did it live up to the hype? Kind of. I mean, the movie was like a mixed bag, because it starts off like very strong with Bruce Wayne, being in Metropolis, witnessing what's going on with the events of Man of Steel. And it was cool because, especially as I just rewatched Man of Steel and like recalling like what events happened during that time, exactly who was where at what time, and also and then at first I thought I was gonna jump to what looked like Justice League setup, but then it wasn't. And then it was basically just focused on balls. I mean, it was just kind of like jumping. It was a little bit jumping all over the place. I mean, that's the thing about this movie, is that, I mean, it kind of suffered from the same problem as Age of Ultron and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, when there was just like a lot of like, there was only also like set up for future movies, but also just like a lot of this almost like it's more like kind of like Amazing Spider-Man 2, where there were just like a lot of just random event, like a series of random events like right in the middle, that's just like it's hard to keep track of what's going on, whose character motivations are, what some of the people's character motivations are, and just subplots that didn't really need to be in there, and they were just kind of like, they didn't really connect. It was kind of incohesive, and they were trying to, but it was just kind of just bouncing around all over the place. And also, I definitely like Ben Affleck's performance as Batman. He was a very good Bruce Wayne. I'll give that. You can tell like there's a little bit. You can see he definitely was able to channel aspects of the detective like the detective Batman, and analytical, and a little bit of the analytical Batman, and and also like he also made like a really great Batman. Like he had like some of the best action scenes of the movie, which you pretty much saw in like all the trailers if you watch them. But I guess my biggest gripe was that he was so saying it's basic. It's like Zack Snyder just watched like the Tim Burton movies and took inspiration for that for his portrayal of, or like the writers, like one of the co-writers, David Goyer, watched the Tim Burton movies and decided to take inspiration from that, because Batman is like, he's basically an amalgam of comic book Batman and the Punisher, because he's straight up like killing people. He's like blowing up their car, like blowing people up, shooting them up with guns from the Batmobile, and people make such a big deal in this movie about Superman killing people, and then when Batman does it, it's just like, oh, what? It's just another day. Nobody acknowledges it, except for Clark to some extent, and it just kind of just like glossed over. It's like, well, it's Batman. So it's almost like the whole attitude of the movie is like, well, it's Batman. He's the darker character, so whatever. Which is like, he has specifically no kill code, and it's like they didn't even like give a reason for why he's been breaking that, or at least like anybody like Alfred of all people should have been calling him out on it, like because like he was pissed about Robin getting killed by the Joker, or because like he's frustrated because, as according to Ben Affleck, um, he said that in an interview that Batman was he's not only paranoid about Superman, but in a sense also jealous by the fact that Superman's done more good for Metropolis and the world in the couple of years he's been on Earth than basically, well, they did point out that in the movie, than the 20 years of Batman has tried to spend trying to clean up Gotham, and it's still crime ridden. And even Alfred kind of points it out and implies it, like that's how it starts: the fever, the rage, the powerlessness that makes good men cruel. Who was actually, I really did like Jeremy Irons as Alfred. I mean, didn't have some of the banter between them that was did kind of resemble Michael Caine and Christian Bale's portrayal of the characters, although it was not as much. Gal Gadot was pretty good as Wonder Woman. Especially during the scenes where she was at the banquets, but I think when she was in like the Wonder Woman attire and like going into battle, there were just times where it was just like it was the same problem with like Henry Cavill, where it's like they're just told that how these characters are supposed to be like uh, very stoic, and some people say that some people say that her lines came across as stiff, but it's like they're supposed to become very stoic individuals, kind of like not wear their hearts on their sleeves. I thought the delivery of her lines was fine. During the battle with Doomsday, and but the thing is, like, they didn't really justify why she was. They didn't really good job of explaining why she was there in the first place, and I mean, she feel like she was. It felt like she was just kind of there to just be extra muscle for their fight against Doomsday, and then of course Superman. I mean, Henry Cavill was. I mean, he was okay. I mean, the thing is that I think. I mean, he was still kind of stiff. I mean, I feel like he still struggles to like he's a little bit stiff at times. He still kind of struggles to be more animated. Be more animated as Superman, because like I feel like this is the problem. Is like I remember this article where it talked about how Jerry Siegel and Joel Schuster like said that Superman was basically supposed to be like the metaphor for a guy coming from humble beginnings and achieving greatness, or wanting to achieve greatness and wanting to be better than what he was. And that's instead of like that was the metaphor for Clark Kent, the Clark Kent mild mannered persona, farm boy, and Superman was like the ideal that he was striving to be, to like better himself and be the best that he be the best person he can be, and like trying to reach reaching all their goals, and but apparently like it's they got pushed aside when DC started cashing in on the character, and it got bastardized, and that's why everybody keeps complaining that he's like antiquated and boring. And the problem is that I wish people would understand, more people understand what they were trying to do with the character from the get-go, but got lost in translation and sands of time, so to speak. And now it just feels like if you're going to get people involved in a Superman project, you got to make sure that they don't look at Superman as a boring character, because you kind of feel like Henry Cavill's kind of bored with it. I feel like this character is not very fleshed out, or Zack Snyder feels like he doesn't find Superman as interesting either, because like he spent more time trying to like flesh out Batman and kind of giving him an arc than even Superman, because he did have this inner turmoil about how much good was he really doing for the world, and trying to redeem him, feeling guilty about feeling some kind of guilt about all the people's lives he couldn't save in Metropolis. But that doesn't really but but they don't really explore that very well. And of course, Lois is there. Amy Adams does a good job, but it feels like she doesn't. Her storyline is sort of just like it's one of the. It's just needless. They don't really need to. It just takes away too much from the movie. It doesn't really need to be there, and that's what the thing is. Like, it wanted to please everybody. It wanted to be a sequel to Man of Steel. It wanted to be a Batman movie, which I'm sure is why she kept, which is why she was in there, even though there wasn't really much for her to do, and it was just kind of, it was just felt very forced. And Jesse Eisenberg, you know, everybody else. I mean, yeah, Jeremy Irons was great. Lawrence Fishburne was great. Jesse Eisenberg, I didn't hate his performance as much as I anticipated, but I didn't like it either, just because I've watched so many reviews on YouTube basically confirming that he was just as bad as most people expected him to be. But it was just like I wasn't impressed with him either, because there were like scenes where it's like one minute he's channeling Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, and then he's like spewing out nonsense and metaphors like he's fucking Gary Busey, and then he's becoming so manic and twitchy and insane that he's coming across as the Joker, and then another scene is like, okay, I'm just gonna, he's like, you know what, I'm gonna settle on Jim Carrey's Riddler from Batman Forever. Like, that's the first thing I thought, and it just didn't work for me. It just really didn't work for me, and they just have the cameos from the Justice League, but they're just kind of like shoehorned in the most like convenient way possible. I mean, one cameo in particular is better than the other, but like I said, like it has like a lot of cool moments and action sequences, and I guess it wanted to be like a drama and not like have some substance to it and not be like a straight up like style over substance, but at the same time it's like it couldn't come there wasn't like a cohesive story to make it feel like it so much. So I mean, that's my two cents. I mean, that's how I felt about it. Uh, I mean, overall, I say go check out the movie. I mean, I'm sure everyone's gonna go see this movie because it's Batman and Superman on the same in the same film in live action. So if you are gonna go see it, I just want to let you know, maybe go in with some lower, temper your expectations and just go to like a matinee showing. I wouldn't recommend, doing like a full price showing for this. And if you can, and see it and maybe a matinee showing for IMAX if you can, because there is one shot like the nightmare sequence when he's fighting what looks like paramilitary soldiers and the parademons, and I think they also did for like their fight too at the end of the movie. Yes, but that's my thoughts. I mean, that's my thoughts on it. I say it was like a decent movie. Could have been better. Could have been better if they took out some subplots and fleshed out the characters more and their motivations. So I'm just gonna go into the spoilers right now. I'm just give you right now, give you an advance warning right now, and give you a second just to jump ahead. So anyway, the nice thing about this is the beginning of the movie. They know that almost everybody under the sun knows Batman's origin story, but considering that it seems like they need to touch upon it out of obligation. They basically just take a page out of the Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton, where they just cover it during the opening credits. But then it gets this weird thing where it's like when the part where Bruce gets surrounded by bats, like he just starts like levitating, like he's just like, and it's like towards this like shaft of light, and it's like towards out of the cave and towards this like shaft of light, like he's being like raptured or something. And it's like the dream, and you can hear a voiceover from Ben Affleck saying the dream led me to the light, or in the dream I was led to the light or something. And then of course he's back in Metropolis. He's driving the Jeep Renegade that they've been promoting in the commercials, and he sees the Zod's ship and the World Engine, and how witnessing the plane crashing into it was sending it to the Phantom Zone, and then he also sees like the the scout ship that I guess is supposed to be Clark's ship crashing through the buildings, and like right above him as he's driving through the streets of Metropolis, and he's calling a guy on the phone, and it turns out he's a floor below where Zod and Superman are using their heat vision, and he realizes they're about to die, and it causes the building to collapse. And that whole scene where he's like running towards the building, the dust and whatnot, and there's this employee who gets whose legs get trapped under steel and basically gets cut off, or they have to basically amputate it later, and then he goes to save a little girl, asking what happened to her parents, and she points to the building and it's like basically been pretty much destroyed. There's nothing left, and he's just looking up to see like Superman and Zod fighting, where he comforts the girl and hugs her, and oh yeah, then there was this, and this is the thing that pissed me off, and I wasn't sure. At first I thought Jimmy Olsen was in the scene because he was taking photographs of when Lois was interviewing like an African warlord. And then it's like they took the camera and then they said apparently he was like a CIA agent, and then I thought, okay, maybe he's not the same character, so I wasn't as bothered by the fact when he got shot in the head at point blank range. And then I found out in an article that he was Jimmy Olsen, and then they made him a CIA agent trying to capture the warlord, and Zack Snyder was like, oh, well, we didn't have time to include him in all the pantheon of our characters for the DC universe, but hey, at least we can have some fun with him, right? He's a pretty big major fucking character, and you shot him in the head. If like he was on the screen for like 5 seconds, that's bullshit. And then of course it leads to a hostage situation where there's these mercenaries there like shooting up starts shooting up the place, and then Superman comes to save him, but basically is tackling the warlord into a wall and presumably killing him. And that's where it leads to this whole investigation where the bullets that were used in the firefight during that whole attack were bullets that were untraceable. And I think like the general, who is now like a Secretary of State from the last movie, he's basically reluctant to get involved in it, and it turns out that it's from LexCorp, and it's one of his needlessly complicated ways of Lex trying to discredit Superman. First by setting up this first of making Superman the scapegoat for all the death and destruction of like the African warlords and mercenaries, even though some of the mercenaries who shot the place up were hired by Lex. And then he wants to like try to gain he wants to try to get a piece of kryptonite that was found in the Indian Ocean by some kids, imported into the U.S. First through the Senator played by I think Holly Hunter, and then she says like you can piss in a jar and call it Granny's peach tea, but I'm not gonna do your bidding, essentially. And then it leads to he actually does take a piss in a jar and leave it for that says Granny's peach tea during the hearing where Superman's asked to come and answer be held accountable for his actions. And Wallace, the former employee who like spray painted a false god on the Superman statue, and also had his legs cut off, and also had his legs cut off as a result of the damage from the whole battle. He's basically given a motorized wheelchair by Lex Luthor, which turns out to be rigged with a bomb that blows up the whole building. And now people are blaming Superman for that, and Superman's blaming himself because it's like he didn't scan the room to see there was a bomb in the wheelchair, and then he goes into self-imposed exile, and where he's in the mountains, and he sees a vision that talks to a vision of his dad, Kevin Costner, and that's the thing. Like, there's this going on. There's Lex trying to, get the get the kryptonite. Then he's also he just smuggles, and then Batman's trying to investigate like that he knows that he trying to get the kryptonite into this states, and he tries to get a flash drive, hopefully for more information on the kryptonite. But he also finds out that LexCorp was also doing research on metahumans, which it turned out to be the Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman. And the thing is that that's basically their. And the thing is, like, and Wonder Woman happens to be there to like steal the decryption thing to and like gets copy and just make a copy of it, and doesn't really sure what prompted her to know what Lex was doing and why she was there. And then but then it's like when Bruce has a chance to decrypt the file, that's when it leads to what they call the nightmare sequence, where he's like in the desert and he's fighting off these military guys, and I swear it looks like parademons because they have the insectoid wings and almost like kind of look like praying mantis, and the paramilitary guys look like they're from the Injustice Gods Among Us game. And then when he's unmasked by Superman, he says that she was my world, and then impales Batman in the chest. And then next there's this image of what looks like Ezra Miller as the Flash appearing in this vortex of light and lightning, and telling him that you were right about him all along. She's the key, Lois Lane's the key. How far have I come back? How far have I come back? I don't know how far have I come back. And that's what causes Bruce to wake up. And I have no idea. So it was the Flash able to come to people in dreams? Or was he actually there and then Bruce just kind of like passed out at some point? Like that was what was confusing about. That's like one of the things that was confusing about this. And like I said, it's like it wasn't clear like how Wonder Woman got wind of what Lex was doing, because at the end of the movie she says how she left man's world 100 years ago because she's seen them at their worst, and man's created a world where they're unwilling to work together. So it's like, what brought you back to the States? Because what does like Themyscira have like social media now and computers, and you follow Lex Luthor on Twitter? Like, how the hell did you know that? And then there's also this whole I don't know. This is the weird thing. This is the weird thing. I guess this is going back to a line that Diana said to Bruce, where she says, about the thing about little boys, their lack of inclination to share, and then he sends her an email attachment with all the video files on her, and one has just a picture of her from World War One, then the other one has video files on the Flash stopping a bank robbery while he's stopping not a bank robbery, he's shopping for milk, and he's stopping a convenience store robbery. The Cyborg being his origin story, and basically a video of glowing blue eyes, and then Jason Momoa's Aquaman just looking into the camera with his trident and like swimming off at super speed. And it's just like, yeah, it's just very convenient. And then of course you find out that Lex and then Lex, like I said, this whole this thing with the metaphors, it's almost like he starts spouting out metaphors, don't even metaphors and sayings that his dad used to tell him, and I'm just like, what the hell is that even? I can't even remember them. It's like, what the hell does that even mean? He would stop mid-sentence when he's giving a speech at a banquet, and then he's just rambling on. It's just it's almost like he just does it's basically he's doing Jesse Eisenberg is doing what Jesse Eisenberg people expect Jesse Eisenberg to do, was just rambling. He just doesn't sound nervous about it. He just sounds just kooky and just does it with more menace, and so it's why you can't take the character seriously. He doesn't have a commanding presence. And apparently the only reason Zack Snyder did it was to sort of I guess subvert expectations, that cast somebody like him in a more iconic role, even though Bryan Cranston did turn out he did read an audition for Lex Luthor, and I really wish they just chose him. Um, cause like I say, like he gets more twitchy and manic, and then you feel like I'm gonna have too much of this guy, and he kidnaps Martha Kent in order to force um, Superman to go fight Batman because Lex is the only one with common sense to realize, okay, this guy, he looks just like he clearly Clark Kent clearly is Superman. He's just wearing glasses now. It's not gonna only an idiot would fall for that, and he's the only one apparently doesn't fall for it. And so he makes a half-assed attempt to try to tell him what he kind of tries to tell Batman what's going on, like, I need your help. But at least this is does lead to like really cool fight scene where it's just like you see how brutal it is, where he's using like sonic waves to subdue him, then like machine guns, and then he finally uses like the kryptonite gas grenade to like even the playing field. But the problem is like he doesn't test it to see how much long it's gonna last. So that there is a point where Superman has Batman on the ropes, and it's like you can hear like when he tries to punch him, like first you hear like he gets actual punches, then like you can hear like a clank on his gauntlet from his mech suit, and you would think that's the point where Superman would try to say, Lex kidnapped my mom and said it was your life for hers, but they just kind of keep on fighting until it gets to the point where Bruce uses more of the gas grenade, and he's about to stab him with the Kryptonian spear, and it was like Lois of all people who was able to get there in time to plead for his life, especially when Clark says, save Martha, and then it starts to piss him off. It's like, how do you know that name? How do you know that name? And he's like, Martha's the name of his mother, and then since Martha Kent, Martha Wayne, and then that's when he has this like sudden epiphany and realize, okay, I can relate to this. This guy's relatable. I can relate to this guy. He's not so bad after all. People said it was kind of contrived. I was fine. It worked for me. It just kind of like snapped him to his senses. It just made him realize, okay, like, this guy's just not like, he has human qualities. He hasn't, I can identify with him on some level, like whatever. And so he basically goes to rescue Martha Kent, and that's when that was that whole like warehouse scene where you saw in the final trailer where he like bashing through like mowing down through like 30 guys on, and he's able to get her out, and then chase, and then Lex releases Doomsday, who basically looks like one of the orcs or something from Lord of the Rings, and he eventually gets the bone protrusions, and Wonder Woman comes into the fight, and the problem is they realize and Bruce is able to trick Doomsday into following him from Metropolis to Gotham to the abandoned warehouse, the abandoned port, because that's where they have the kryptonite spear. The problem is that for some reason, needlessly, Lois threw the kryptonite spear into the water instead of just leaving it there, even though Superman already moved away from it. So then it's like, okay, now she has to go get it now, and then it leads to her being trapped under the rubble during the battle. Then Superman had to save her, and then Superman had to go grab the spear, and lead to him, sacrificing his life, just like in Death of Superman, to beat Doomsday. Since when Superman stabbed Doomsday with the spear, Doomsday stabbed him simultaneously. And it turns out that Martha gave Lois a wedding ring during the funeral because Clark wanted to propose. And Bruce talked to Diana about trying to find others to go go search for the other metahumans to form the Justice League in Superman's absence because of like the vision he had. And at first, like when he goes on this rant that you saw earlier about how many people stay good in Gotham. This guy has the power to destroy the entire human race. He goes from being cynical to a little bit more hopeful when even Diana seems a little bit cynical, and she says like, I think it's something like people are good, or people like we betray one another, but we rebuild in spite of it, and it also, and then of course like Bruce is pissed for Lex's role in Superman's death, so he visits him while he's in prison, his head shaved bald, and he goes on this rant about how, and he pushes his face like up to the prison, saying like, "There are more coming, there are more coming," and then he starts like getting more twitchy and manic, and it's like you can see like snot running down his nose, and just for a second I thought he would just fucking burst into the song and just go, "Who's that pretty girl in that mirror there?" I don't know. I hope they can like recast him like they did with War Machine, Incredible Hulk. Maybe he'll ask for too much money, and then they'll have an excuse to do that. Because I heard he's supposed to have a cameo in Suicide Squad too. But anyway, like I said, I enjoyed the movie. I found it less dour than Man of Steel. I think I like this more than Man of Steel, but it did have its fair share of problems, and it was a mix, and it could have had a more cohesive story in the end. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think? Have you already seen Batman vs Superman? What do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.